Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live, the Extraordinary Advisor Show. My name is Ellen Rogin, and as always, I have guests to bring you great information to help you in every area of your life, especially your business, and today is absolutely no exception. I am thrilled to have Syble Solomon on with us today. I'm going to give her a formal introduction in a little bit, but I met Syble many years ago when I read about her in a Horse's Mouth article. And I was fascinated because right from the start, when I used to be a financial advisor and I had just started my career, I was always fascinated in how people made decisions about money, their money personalities, and the psychology around money for people. And I knew at a core level that this was going to be key for me to understand that and working effectively with my clients. And I spent a lot of energy and time and training in being better at that. And I know it paid off in my business. And I'm excited to learn from Syble today about ways that you guys can all do that in your businesses as well. And she has deep experience. So let me give you a little bit of her formal background. Syble Solomon, if you're not familiar with her, is the founder and owner of LifeWise Strategies, and she's the creator of the Money Habitudes. They're a leading money personality profile used by financial advisors all around the globe and other financial advisors. And Syble has been quoted in hundreds and hundreds of professional publications, again, around the globe, has spoken to all sorts of different audiences about how to be more aware and use their strengths in the way that they deal with money to be more effective, and also work on those areas that maybe need a little support. So, Syble, welcome to our show today. I'm thrilled to be reconnected with you and to have you on.
Well, thank you. It's a delight to be here. And since Horse's Mouth came up in the very beginning of when I got started, I feel like we've come full circle. So it's great to be here. And I really love the articles and all the support that Horse's Mouth does.
For sure. And, like I said, I wouldn't know you or have been able to use the Money Habitudes. I used them when I had my practice using more of the cards, but I know you have an online version. But I'm
Yeah.
curious. So you've been doing this a long time. And so, more than 20 years ago, how did you start and why did you really think it was important to understand the psychological side of money for people?
So the interesting thing is I have no background in finance, but I was teaching a graduate course at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. And there were 8 sections. The course was called Planning for the Third Age. And there were 8 sections to that. And finance was only one of them. But it was the one where I had the most questions from the students and where students told me things that were just ridiculous. So I had one student in her mid 30s that worked at a hospital. She had been there for over 8 years and had never signed up for their retirement plan. And they had a fabulous matching program, so she lost tens of thousands of dollars as a result of that. And then I was doing training in the community about, again, looking at the third age and how you can start planning today in 8 different areas. And people would come up to me all the time just telling me crazy stories that had to do with finance more than any other topic. And I was so astounded, I decided to start doing research to understand why people did what they did, why they didn't do things that they should have done and they knew they should have done. So I looked up the research in finance, psychology, behavioral economics, and addictions and started seeing patterns and realized this was such a difficult topic that I wanted to do something to make it easy for financial planners to bring in the emotional side of money and for people who worked with professionally with people with personal development, counseling, coaching types of situations so that they could bring money into the conversation without talking about dollars and budgets and investments. And it just all came together. The next thing I know, I had a deck of cards.
So, why do you think it is important for advisors to understand their clients' money personalities? I mean, I think there's advisors out there that are like, look, I'm not a psychologist. I'm really good at asset allocation or the technical side of things, and that's where I'm adding my expertise. So why is it important that there's a broader, more holistic look at how people are with money?
Mhm. So, first of all the information that financial planners have now is available to us. That wasn't true 25 years ago. So, when people come to you and want they want to work with you, they don't need you to tell them about statistics and dollars of investments and just go on and on about how what you can do for them in terms of their money. They already know that's what your field is. What they want to know is, can they trust you? Can they connect with you? Can they uh, can they just relax and feel that not only it's kind of a given that you're going to know about how to invest, but they want to know that you're going to be there for them when they're going through different transitions and that you understand where they're coming from. So the number one thing when I did my research, I came up with three different outcomes from that research. So, one thing was that money is the most difficult topic to talk about. You all talk about money all the time. And yet, when I've done trainings that are for financial planners, and I say to them, if I were to ask you to introduce yourself to somebody you didn't know and to share with them someplace that you went on vacation or how much money you earned and how much money you owe in this past year, how many of you would share about the money? And typically, either nobody raises their hand or one person does. And there's always a story, something amazing had happened that year, and they're happy to share that. But most of the time, nobody is going to want to talk about money. And why is that? Because you talk about money all the time. You should be really comfortable with it. On the other hand, when you're talking about money, you are never talking about something that's neutral. Money represents so many different things to us, from security, love, acceptance, being able to be free. You name it. There's a really famous psychologist named Dr. Gottman, John Gottman, and he started to make a list of all of the things that money represents to people. And when he got to 100, he stopped his list. But when you start thinking about it, when you're talking to people about money, you're never just talking about money. So, one of the things that happens is that if you don't have any insight into how to begin that conversation without focusing on the money, that you're going to be losing people from the get go. I want to share one experience. There was a woman who I was working with as an executive coach, and she really wanted to retire. And I kept saying, "Why don't you retire?" And she kept saying, I don't have enough money." I said, "Do you really know that you don't have enough money? If you really sat down with a financial planner to look at what you have." It took me months to get her to go to that financial planner. When she finally went, the person, she was a very strong willed, had a great position, and what the financial planner did was said, I think he was probably thinking, let me just be as efficient as possible and let me just get to the real stuff. And he sent her all of the forms and all of the things that needed to get filled out. And you know what her reaction was? She just put the file someplace and didn't open it, because even though she worked for with money, personally, money was a huge issue. Her husband didn't want to deal with it. It took me another 3 months to get her to go back to the financial planner or to go to a different financial planner, because she needed someone to sit down to understand her situation, to understand her before she started filling out all those forms. So that's one really important reason to start with a conversation that's real and authentic, not a silly question about what kind of car do you drive or what do you like to do, and then decide whether they're risk takers based on that. So that's
So,
one advantage.
Sybil, what
Yeah.
are some good starting questions to build trust or have people feel more comfortable versus just, sending a form to fill out or jumping right in if you're in an initial meeting with the numbers or the tactical part of things?
Okay. So one of the reasons that I developed Money Habitudes was to take away the idea that you have to come up with the right question. It's to let people discover for themselves what are the things that, not that they say they should do, or the goals that they should be having, or that they want to answer in the way that you want them to answer. What you want is for them to be able to give you information that's really authentic. So with the idea of developing Money Habitudes, you can quickly look at what their outcome is, and you can ask them more questions based on that. So, for example, let's say somebody gets a lot of giving cards, or a lot of giving when they do the online version. And as a result of that, you know that giving is really important. But what you don't know is, how do they like to give? Are they philanthropic? Do they like to give to their children? Do they like to give to their church, or to go to an organization when they're having a big fundraiser and give it that way so other people can see how much they're giving? And it gives you a really authentic way to approach them with real questions, and they get insights that may surprise them as well. So they start conversations, and really enjoy that interchange that feels personal and authentic, as opposed to filling out a form, or responding in the way that you want to hear them. And Ellen, I know you've used them. What was your experience? Uh,
Yeah, well, what I was thinking as you were saying that, Sybil, is that it evidences using some kind of tool like Money Habitude cards or some other tool
mhm,
to have a conversation with people that's broader than just their money. It's about who they are and what's important to them. I think does several things. Is it helps them um, know that you care more about them than just grabbing those assets and investing for them or selling them some kind of product, which people are a little bit afraid of. It eases people into having a money conversation. As you said, people are not always comfortable sharing, and we assume, or you may assume, and I did when I was an advisor, that like, oh, sometimes people are just comfortable because that's why they're here and it's different. It's not. It's still, they may be telling you things they've never told anybody before. And so to make them feel really comfortable and safe for doing that is really important. And what I love about the Money Habitudes cards is that there is a way of looking at people in their unique way of dealing with money. You know, I used to
mhm.
say, like, if it was just about spending less and saving more, like, then everyone would do it. And if it
That's
was
right.
always about, selling high and buying low, there wouldn't be that expression. But people aren't always tactical with money. I was an econ major in college, and back when I was there weren't behavioral finance courses, and they were like, "Oh, people are rational decision makers." Well, we know they're
Oh,
not when it comes to money, right? It's ridiculous. So I love the ability for clients to see that you care more about them as a person and making their plan work. And I also saw that with couples, having a tool like that, if there's one person in the relationship who was less engaged, it got them engaged because you weren't digging right into the details right away. It was more about who they are as a person. So I think it's really, really helpful to not only understand who they are, but to evidence you care more about them as a person. I have a question
mhm.
for you. We talked about this a little bit before we went live. For years, I have known and really believed in my core that understanding people's attitudes and beliefs about money and how they think about money is it adds the foundation of doing a great job as a financial advisor, to really understand that. Because as we just said, people aren't rational. People have, as you said, hundreds of meanings they've ascribed to money, yet in general, the financial services industry still focuses on, yes, more planning now than maybe 10 years ago, but it's still really tactical. Like, how is your investment portfolio allocated? Have you done your estate plan? Are you minimizing income taxes? All of which are important. But I feel like there's this whole other side of things that never gets talked about. Like, why do you think that is? And what has your experience been in that? Do you feel like the industry is moving a little bit more towards looking at things more holistically to make a difference?
So the industry has to. And, you have a lot of people who've been in the field for a very long time. They have their established clients. They're going along. Those people have been happy with them and everything is fine. And they're probably not interested in any of these, in any of this conversation. But for people who are relatively new or for people who are looking to really build their clientele, you're looking at, in old school, you talk to men. In new school, you realize that women make up more than half of the professionals that are coming in, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs. And you know that you need to include women. The number of people who are immigrants that are investing now and interested in investing, they they are the clients, along with the clients you now have, they are the clients of the future. You have people who are very entrepreneurial and are looking to do things in a very different way. If the way that you approach them doesn't doesn't help them to feel included, I will guarantee you they are not going to come back. Or if they do come back, they're not going to stay with you when they see that they have alternatives. They need to know that you value them. And a lot of times, simple questions that you ask, like, well, what's your goal in 10 years from now? Or how much do you think you need for retirement? And people have no idea. They've never thought about it. They don't even know how to begin to think about it. When you start off with those kinds of questions, you're basically putting people on the defensive. And I know that there's things that are, questionnaires and people check off on a box. Even people who are really very successful and well established, they have issues around money. Your emotional relationship with money has nothing to do with how much money you have. People who have very little money may be incredibly generous. People who have a lot of money may not part with a penny, right? So if you're approaching everybody with, we just want to amass as much money as possible and I have the skills to do it, I have the knowledge to do it, the chances are that people who don't fit into your narrow little box, they are not going to want to work with you, right? And as you said, there's nothing linear about this. If everybody knows that they should be saving for the future, everybody knows that they shouldn't be spending more money than they have, which leads me to another thing that's not often talked about is that financial professionals that are advisors, they work with people, you all work with people who typically have quite a bit of money and a lot of discretionary spending. And you're really interested in their investments. But oftentimes, what happens is that they have enough money that they're not going into bankruptcy or something. But on the other hand, one person may be spending in a way that's really not to their advantage and doesn't know why, and may also have a lot of shame and guilt about the way that they're spending. I really recommend that every financial advisor that's out there partners with a financial educator that can help people look at the day to day type of things and help them feel in control day to day of their money. Most of you aren't interested in doing that. And on the other hand, I also recommend that you partner or at least have recommendations that you can refer people to if they have any kind of issues, that you can have that support. You don't need to be a therapist. You don't need to help people with budgets, but you might need to provide them with those kinds of supports.
The other thing about, as you said, people asking a question like, what are your goals, or how much money do you want to have at retirement? I feel like there's a top down that advisors who have done more traditional planning almost prescribe what people's goals should be, versus going bottom up. Like really giving them a way, whether it's Money Habitude cards or some other tool, to have a deeper understanding of what's really important to them so they can get behind it. And I think that's really important, because I know as a CFP, we were taught there's these certain areas you always talk about with people, and that's true. But what if someone doesn't ever really want to retire? And we want to make sure they're financially secure, but like maybe they love what they do and they want to do it till they're 106. So like to have some way to have a bigger conversation, they're going to get behind the goals and hopefully do the work that it takes to achieve them more readily.
And you know what? They need to be the one to do that, because when people come in to see a financial planner, they already know what financial planners do, and they want to please you. Again, that's at a very subconscious level, but they're going to give you almost all the time, they're going to give you the answers that you want to hear. And they're going to give you the answers that they think should be the right answers for them. So if you can't get underneath that, it's sort of like with couples. When couples are arguing, if you get about money, if you can't get past the money, then you're not going to get to the root of what the issues are, right? So it's really what you're saying is really important. And I just wanted to mention too, with couples, that when you have couples come in, oftentimes you have one person who's very dominant, who is the one who clearly is in charge of the money or talking about the money, and the other person's really quiet. If you don't include that other person, and I know everybody will make an effort to do that, but if you don't have some way to see what's important to that other person and to take into consideration those types of things in the conversation, that person may be the one that will say, I'm not working with them. And you won't understand why, right? So if you have a person, for example, that security is really important to, and for them, security means that the house is paid for, the cars are paid for, a certain amount of money is in the bank, and they're married to somebody who's an entrepreneur and who's constantly jumping into different business deals and feels that security is as long as you feel like you can manage in the future and that you have resources to take out more loans or work with other people, that you feel secure. If the advisor doesn't realize that these two people are looking at security in very different ways and doesn't address it, and just goes with their own bias of what security means, they're probably not doing justice to that couple. And what you want is to be able to look at the couple and what's important to them and see how they balance each other. Because oftentimes you have somebody where security or planning is very important. And because there's the familiarity bias. So we're going to reach out to people, feel more comfortable with those that have security and planning as a bias. We may totally dismiss the person who's more spontaneous and not realize that they're balancing each other. They need each other, or one's going to have a pretty boring life, saving every penny, and the other one is going to feel like there's something wrong with them, that they can't control their spending.
I think that's so important, because as an advisor, it would be easy to judge your client without meaning to, right? So I that bias towards feeling more comfortable with the client who is a better planner or security because they're going to make a good client, so makes sense. And when I think back about clients I lost over the years, invariably it was because there was some judgment I had about them. Of course, I never expressed it, but people get when you're judging them. There's an energetic way that you're judging how much money they're spending or how they're making a decision. Or if someone's really a planner and the other person's spontaneous, you might think, well, they're an idiot, they're never going to hit their goals. Of course, you would never say that. So I think that's really important for advisors to realize, like, you're human too, and there's ways that we come at things with a filter that can impact your relationships. And I just want to go back to the couples thing. When I, many years ago, had done the Money Habitudes cards with my husband, I know he came out high as a giver, which makes so much sense. My husband's super generous in every way. And it didn't occur to me till we were just having this conversation now. Like, I think of his generosity in charitable contributions. We have a big charitable plan in our family, how we give. Also, in him doing kind acts. Like, Sybil, you've never met my husband. If you told him you needed a ride to the airport or something, he'd be like, okay, I'm happy to help, right? He'll drop things to help other people. But what I didn't realize, Stephen and I have a very good money relationship. There's clearly things we don't always agree on, but luckily money has not been an area of disagreement, except for one area, which is about being generous with our kids. I am like the tough love, you're going to learn how to handle money, former financial advisor mom. And of course, I would be there for my kids, our kids, if they needed something. And Steven's always the one like handing them a 20. They're in their 20s, but he still hands them a 20 when they're home, or wants to pay for more things. And that is why I hadn't actually made that connection in generosity, because I always think of, with us, generosity is giving to people less fortunate or doing kind acts. So super helpful. The more you know. The other thing that was really interesting to me that I haven't forgotten, even though I had done my Money Habitudes many years ago, was I, of course, came out very high on planning. I love planning. I was a financial advisor. Like, that's such a fun act for me to be visualizing the future. It never occurred to me there was another side to it that might be less than excellent. Like, oh,
Okay.
planning too much, not being spontaneous. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about how there's a flip side to everything. There's like the really beautiful light part of things, and then the growth edge for people.
Absolutely. And usually this is all so subconscious, we're not even really aware of it. So, for example, security, the downside of security is for people who actually can't enjoy their money at all, can't spend it, have to save it, can't be generous. If their child comes and asks them for a loan, what they'll say is they want the child to absolutely positively tell them everything that they figured out to be correct, to be responsible, and then they're going to set up something so that the kid is really accountable about paying it back. And that may be okay, but it could also be so controlling that it really interferes with their relationship. When you have people who have a lot of status, in status for me just means you want to be accepted. You want people to think well of you, and in some cases that means fitting in other cases that means standing out. And the downside of that is if you're constantly doing what you think is important to other people, and then you're not necessarily taking care of what your own needs are, and you may become really superficial. And people can't trust you if they don't know who you are, if you're just responding in the moment. The giving, the enabling piece is a huge part of the downside of it. And it's really interesting that I've had people say, "But I'm really generous. I give to this and I give to that," but they're giving out of social responsibility, which is great, or they're giving out of guilt, or they're giving out of wanting something back, whether that's love or a new position or a, whatever it is. They're not necessarily giving for the joy of it. And people who give for the joy of it need to sometimes stop and think, wow, I really want to help them out, but I may be doing them a disservice by giving so much. I take away that they're able to trust themselves, that they can do what they need to do on their own, and that's part of their growth period as well. And for
Yeah.
planning, you planners, sometimes you just get stuck. You make out a plan, you know it's a fabulous plan, and then something else happens that you couldn't have expected, but you can rationalize why you're going to continue with this plan, and you just get stuck because you've already invested in it. And
Yeah.
you need to be a little more flexible, which is why marrying somebody who's a little more carefree or a little more spontaneous can sometimes help you lighten up a bit.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that as from our growth edges that we can look at both sides. right? So I love that I'm a planner. I also know I have to work on, because even in a day, if something goes off, I get how it throws me off a bit. And so I'm aware of that and I'm working on it. But anyway, Sybil, such a great conversation. I love when we can talk about the meaning of money outside of just the left brain ticking and tying part of it, which of course is important. But without the other side, it's not as effective. So grateful for all the work that you do. If I know, if people want to learn more about you, and I feel like you said you had a free offer where people can test this out, where should they go, Sybil?
So we also have an online version, and a lot of people, particularly during the pandemic, are finding this really helpful because they're working with the clients virtually. So the online version has all the same statements as the cards. They can go online. You can have them do it before they come in to meet with you, so you have something really fresh to talk with them about. And it comes with a pretty in-depth report. There's a quick report with results, and then a pretty in-depth report. Uh, so you're welcome to go to moneyhabitudes.com, and on the screen there is a link. If you go there, you can just do a trial, see what you think of it, and please feel free to contact me with any questions. Happy to talk with you about how it's been used, how you could use it, what's specific to your situation.
Yeah, and what I would add is I've used the Habitude cards in workshops. And at the time, and I'm sure you still have this, Sybil, there was like a workbook with some scripts and a way to do a workshop. And I found it such an interesting conversation for people. So those of you out there looking to do something a little bit different, but on point with your business, you may want to check Sybil's resources out as well. So thank
Right.
you so much. And thank you for
Yeah, I was going to say on the website under resources, there's some other ideas too.
Beautiful. Thank you. And thank all of you for being here, having this conversation with us today. Again, my name is Ellen Rogin. You can find out more about me at ellenrogin.com. That's ELLENROGIN.com. And if you go to ellenrogin.com/horse's mouth, you can download the special report about what extraordinary advisors know that others don't. And with the conversation we had today, it's all about staying relevant in an industry that is changing. So thank you for being here. If you have suggestions for guests or want to connect with me, I'm on all the social media places you would normally look. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or any of those fun places. And as always, the question to ponder is, how big of a positive impact are you willing to make? Remember, be great and create great every